Call this meeting to order. Rise for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is a special meeting of Fayette County Commissioners. It has one purpose only, and that's for a presentation by Butler Fairman Seifert for a pavement analysis similar to the one we had a couple of years ago. So I'll turn this over to Mr. Michael Mang.
Thank you. Again, I'm Mike Mang with Butler Fairman Seifert. We have Mike Waldron with me here today. Most of you know him. I understand you've seen some Pazer analysis before. That's what I'm going to talk about. We were just having a little discussion there. I'll hit on most of those topics, but kind of one of the reasons this has come up is we're under the understanding through NDOT that the most requested thing from the LPAs is getting some funding for local roads and the maintenance of the roads. And there's been a recognition from some of those at NDOT that they're going to do this with perhaps some sort of standardized accredited system. There's many flavors of that and ways to go about it, but one that we've kind of been looking at and utilizing in other communities for years is the Pazer system. It's got a 1 through 10 on your asphalt and concrete roads, and it's got a 1 through 4 system on your gravel and dirt roads if you happen to want to do those. So big reason for the analysis of the pavement is, basically the surface. The surface is what you hear from your community that raises all the questions. The roughness of the ride, the surface distress, which starts alluding to the conditional problems of it, skid characteristics, then just the overall structure of the pavement where it's breaking down for various reasons. And I know most of this information, but I forgot to grab my notes. There's a couple of things I don't want to forget to tell you. Main benefits is to meet your goals. Both. We understand as commissioners that you have different districts and people come into you wanting to know. It's been a long time since my road's been paved, or it's in bad shape because we had a detour and we had semis or dump. You've got to answer those questions, and to get those in a map or something like that with some analysis on it to show them, hey, we last paved this in 2005. And we've looked at it. This is analysis on it. Yeah, it's got some bad places, but we've got some other roads in the county that are in worse shape. So having that information as a whole to be able to talk to your constituents is helpful. We understand, and that's the graphical part of this. We'll talk a little bit about what we would deliver on a project like this, and that kind of leads to setting the priorities, maybe not just by class function of the road or where it's at, but what really needs to be done as a whole for the county instead of some of those things. We'll let you look at them together. Pazer, I understand you've seen other presentations about Pazer, so I won't spend a lot of time getting into the details. The beauty of a Pazer system, they've got manuals. This is for asphalt. It's not very thick, but it's very specific on how you rate things, and we'll get into that in a second. But it is an established system that has a 1 through 10 rating, like I talked about, and you just go out and look at the distresses. You don't take into account anything else until you get it back, and then you start looking at age and whether it was on a what class of road, how much traffic was on there. So the initial look at it is just based on the distress. Frank, you had a question whether there was others. There are others. What's established and what's accredited. There's nothing really listed by Federal Highway or more especially NDOT at this point. That's coming. We understand. I brought a clip out of the NDOT. ACEC has a group that meets with NDOT and brings up topics, and this is directly from their meeting minutes that I pulled out this morning. From their December 10th, 2015 meeting, NDOT is continuing to work on a pavement preservation policy so the LPAs can utilize federal funding for pavement preservation projects. Use of federal money for this type of project will require that the LPA has a federal highway approved pavement inventory and assessment in place. Likely will be similar to PASER, and there will be no federal participation in the cost for the LPA to develop the inventory. So we turn around and we relate that what's happening in other states that has to deal with Federal Highway 2. So the closest two to us are Michigan and Wisconsin, who both have maybe even more severe than Indiana, but the winter freeze and fall process that deteriorates our roads. The PASER system was actually developed by the University of Wisconsin. It's used by WestDOT, their DOT statewide, like our NDOT, and it's also used in Michigan. And they are able to get federal funding through those DOTs to the LPAs through this mechanism.
On this federal funding, are the states being required to match?
We don't know how. Typically, we've seen if it's safety money, they pull it out of HSIP, what they call safety money. We've seen that at a 90-10, 90% federal money, 10% local.
So this House Bill 1001, those are the monies that the governor is releasing for infrastructure. But are they going to be applied directly to infrastructure, or are some of those monies going to be the state's match for the federal monies?
Some of that will be the federal money coming to you and them matching to get the state using it as a match. So it's kind of them getting, if it was 90-10 money, it would be them using the 10, the federal 90, and you get it at 100%. Or it could be 80-20 money, and they match 10%, get 80 from the feds, and then you got to do a 10% match. We don't really know how that's going to come out, especially as it goes to local maintenance funds, because that's never been done before in Indiana, other than a force account. If you're familiar with some of the force account things they did in the past. There's a lot of unknowns, but the force accounts, I don't know if you've dealt with those, or Warren, you've ever ran across them. Used to, they would give you you would come up with a project, say you wanted to go pave a road, and you said it was going to cost $150,000, and you had a quote from a contractor or a material supplier that equaled that. They would give you the money, you'd do it, you'd get the paperwork back to them, it was all said and done. Then they started saying, okay, if you do that and you do it with county forces, you got to pay prevailing wages and you got to follow these federal guidelines. So then they started pulling back all those force account things. We don't know how they're going to roll this out, to be honest with you. Neither do they at this point.
What kind of a timetable do you think we're looking at before the monies would be available?
I would hate to speculate. I probably need to ask some people that attend those sessions, and I just get the information back to me. I can certainly ask John, or probably the president of our company would have a better feel for when that would be.
I don't think they've even said yet.
Yeah, they may have, but if they have, it's...
So it could be summer?
Could be summer.
Could be next year.
They're acting like it's going to be fairly quick. But I guess based on other things like the force accounts that we saw in the past, or the sign inventory and the sign replacement things, the earlier you're ready or have the information to get those fundings and getting in on the first or second calls of that, you'll probably be able to do it with a lot less paperwork and red tape.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no.
I ask these questions while I'm thinking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you've seen the PASER system before, I'm going to kind of speed through some of these slides, and that's what we're here for, Frank, to answer your questions. So the PASER is rated by lane. I kind of touched on this a while ago. A distress is a distress. They don't take anything else into account as far as how much traffic's on that road or anything until that gets its rating. Then you use the traffic and the collectors to set your priorities. Our approach is we do it at a low speed in a truck. We do get out of the truck and look at running and take measurements and things like that. One of the uniquenesses I like to point out about a Payzer system as compared to some of the others that we've looked at for other, that people's asked us to look at, is that a road is only a 10 once. So when you put a road in as new, that's when it's a 10. You can do all kinds of reconstruction to it and those type of things, but it'll only get a rating as high as a 9, unless it's complete full reconstruction. So if that's followed and used throughout the state, it's a very good system. So if you want to see some of the ratings on this, and I can't expect to have my laptop in, my eyes aren't that good.
You want to sit here and do this?
No, I'm fine. Basically an 8, basically it says there for the visible distresses, there's no longitudinal cracks except reflection of the pavement joints. So basically there's no cracks in it unless they were intended to be joints. So what I like to kind of point out on the 6, 7, and 8, and 9, even though it's not new, those are still very good ratings for roads. And they have out to the side some kind of the recommended remediation to treat those. If you want to move an 8 to a 9, for instance, it basically takes an overlay. But if you want to go from a 7 to an 8, if you can maintain just the cracks, do crack filling on those, that'll raise that back to an 8. So then the next page gets down into the lower, basically a 1 has failed. I'm going to show you some pictures of these. A 2's, you've seen it, it's got alligator crackings, it's over 25% of the surface. There's severe deterioration. You've got 2-inch crevices and potholes that require patching that last for, usually when they get 2 inches and below, they don't last. So the top one there is basically a new road. That's a 10. In a rural setting, and this is a 10 in a kind of urban setting. That's a 7, so that's pretty good. It's just got those cracks filled that we were talking about, and the bottom one is a seal with just those longitudinal joints that they were talking about. This is a 4. This picture isn't real good, but you're starting to see really wide cracks running the length of the pavement. But the big indicator at the 4 is the aggregate is starting to leave the makeup of the composition of the pavement. So that's kind of when it gets to a 4. And then I think I show you what the worst case scenario is. That's a 1 with severe cracking, potholes, and patching that's starting to deteriorate again.
I've actually driven on those roads.
I think we all have.
You okay?
Any questions about the Payzer itself? I'm going to kind of hopefully tell you what the difference would be if BF&S would come in and do that versus somebody else now. So say all things are the same, the Payzer system is used. What our delivery is it'll include photos of all the roads, pretty much every spot on the road. We're going to drive the roads and you'll have a shot. I'll get into it. We're going to take about 180,000 pictures a day with our collection. It's map based, so you're going to have a map that's going to show this. It's connected to an application. That GIS map will have an application behind it. And while we're doing that, we grab, it only makes sense because when we're driving these, we got high-end GPS equipment on our vehicles, and we'll get exact road mileage measurements. We usually grab the state's MVH data and compare that as we go. And if you've got some reconciliation to do and to make sure you're getting all the MVH dollars you can from the state, we'll do an audit of your MVH road mileage as we're doing it.
What is your fee?
I was trying to get your exact road mileage, so help me out here if anybody knows.
Around 382.
I had 398, so it was close.
Am I right, Warren?
How much of that's paved? That 300.
I think Richard Corum said
We only do the paved.
all but about 10%, 20 maybe.
I think
It's about 350 miles.
with the new inventory, it was a lot less, so this would be a good idea to check, because they were checking aerial photography,
Right.
everything. I think they reduced it just recently.
They've migrated from a spreadsheet database to a GIS-based system, and there was lots of things that didn't link up down the state. So we're seeing a lot of communities get a road mileage less than what they thought. So it's a real good time
So
to.
you think we have less than the 380? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think it was 390 before and then went down to 380.
Yeah,
We
okay.
lost mileage.
I think it was like just shy of 400 when I looked at the state database. It may have been a year old, but sometimes, depending when they last looked at it, they have a code in there for whether it's paved or gravel. They did not have that on Fayette County, so I couldn't tell you how much was gravel. You're saying about 10%. So
I'd have to correct that. I think he said there was only about 20 miles of road that was gravel. Richard thought it was roughly right around 20 miles.
Because
I don't know.
5%.
Yeah.
So that would take you, if you were at 400, that would take you around 350, 360, depending on the total amount of miles. So typically, most communities don't want to do the gravel road. There is a rating system for gravel. Gravel's a lot easier to fix with run a grader down it, and you're pretty good to go for quite a while. If it creeps back up, then you run the grader. It's a lot easier to maintain and cheaper, and most.
So do you have a guesstimate?
My guess, based on that,
And I won't hold you to it.
32,000.
Do you have a base per mile that you would?
Uh,
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's kind of like what we were talking about with the cable company. I hate to use that analogy on the negative against me, but we've got a certain amount of equipment that lets us do this quickly. Give me a chance to sharpen my pencil. I'm erring on the high side because we just put a number together. We just did a contract with Clinton County, and I'm kind of basing it on the difference in your road mileage. I'm fairly certain I can sharpen my pencil a little bit on there, but I just need to be sure.
Okay.
Yes, we have a base. Let me kind of go through some of those things. So that's what we think sets us apart from our delivery. Of course, that's not knowing what others do. This is the map, and it's going to be hard to see, but we give you a web-based GIS map that you can get to on your phones, your tablets, your computers, anywhere you're at. That'll we'll have the listing of the roads. We'll have them one color if they're paved, another color if they're gravel. It'll give you the IR codes that NDOT deals with, the inventory routes, what that stands for, your county road numbers. We'll have that's their LRS number. There's also a code. This more data, if we hit that, it's going to take you into more information that you can maintain. So once we rate this, what's happening in Wisconsin and Michigan is their DOTs are requiring, if you do the rating yourself, say you've got somebody at the highway county or Warren wants to have somebody do the ratings on your own staff, they just have to get a certification. It's about a $20 course plus a test. Then you can go out and rate your own. So we'll give you a way. We'd love it if you called us and wanted us to do it for you again down the road, but if you wanted to do it yourself, we'll give you this and you can go in there and record your ratings and have a way of keeping those.
How's this divided between cities and counties?
The money,
The monies?
it's going to be, my guess is since they're making you rate it, they're going to say if it's a Pazer-like and you've got how many roads or segments or whatever they're going to allow us to submit as I say a 3 or below, it's probably going to be based on a quantified number for say Connersville and for Fayette County. So if you've got 50 miles that needs to be done and Connersville has 2 miles, they're going to base it on the mileage and what need, they're going to, Pazer tells us how to fix a road. At this rating, to get it up to an 8, this is what can be done. To get it up to a 10, this is what can be done. So they'll have some guidelines as far as road mileage and width and things like that when applying for it.
So however many miles the city would have, whichever city, they'd be responsible for that.
Yes.
And then the county would be responsible from the city limits out.
Right.
Yeah.
And it would be basically what's in your MVH inventory. So that's kind of what's key to go ahead and look at that why this is being done, because if they're missing roads or you've taken on a subdivision or even lost a subdivision through annexation, you know, you want to get that tax dollar from the NVH, obviously, but you also don't want to have it count against you in your total road mileage when you apply for this fund. There's a lot of things up in the air, I understand, and until that comes out from the funding piece comes out, I guess we're trying to, with the equipment and technology, trying to do this as cheaply for you as you can, so you're ready to respond when they have that funding. If you have an inventory system and you can apply for the funding, we want you to be ready for that.
Have you been in contact with the city?
No. So this lets them keep track of any maintenance. I'm going to show you another. So this is that base information. We can put the rating in. Then if the county highway guys want to go out and keep track of any maintenance they've done and apply cost to it, it's just an added benefit to what is in this little tool that we pass along. This one has chip and seal, mill, and overlay. We can change. These are basically user defined if you want to put anything you want in there. We can apply cost to these by road miles, and it'll calculate an approximate cost that if you guys do all that work yourselves. This is not our vehicle. This was sent to us from the company where we got the camera and equipment and the system that sits inside of it. But basically it uses 2 high-end cameras, and I'll kind of get into this. We're able to travel safely at the posted speed limit, and inside the vehicle a navigator sits there and analyzes the photos that they're coming through good enough. He can also touch spots for where we see the deterioration. If we can travel slower, we will. And if they see rutting and things that requires us to get out and take measurements, then they pause us and pull out. It also, we talked about that road mileage, but as they travel, this plots a route, and then we pull that back and get exact route measurements from RTK GPS signals.
So if you have a stretch of road, let's say a mile long, and let's say it's rated an 8, but in the middle of it you've got some substructure problem and it takes it down to a 3, okay? Do you isolate that section and classify it as a 3 and the rest of it as an 8, or how does that work?
That's a very good question. So the way the Payzer system goes, it basically wants a rating, all kinds of spots along that road. So we're not rating a segment, we're rating those spots individually based on what they are.
That the computer, in other words, this goes in the computer is assigning areas for its measurements and designations,
Yes.
and then it assigns it a number.
Then we can average it for that segment.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's probably the fairest way to do it. And the real reason that the Payzer system was set up, and it didn't always lend itself to, unless they were going to put some funding behind it, is in reality, most cities and towns and counties, they go out and maintain and fix things by segment. This was developed for DOTs that had thousands of miles of roadway, and for them to maximize their cost and get, they were patching, they were fixing patches. It's not, that doesn't lend itself well for what you do here. And if it's a large enough patch the size of this room, maybe, but most of them start out as small little dots on the road and then they grow from there. So this system kind of lets you use both. You do the dots all along the roadway, then you average that. You can also go into it and see, and that works very well. You can also go in and see if, it makes sense that we've got 50 dots here, but 3 of them are 7s and all the rest of them are 2s, and I probably could patch this section if I wanted to. And it's going to be subject to how they're going to let you apply and use that system to apply for the funding. They're going to have some guidelines for how that's used, and that's one of the reasons why we want to photograph all that information.
So the roads, the runways and stuff, airports and et cetera would be excluded from anything like this, correct?
Yes, they have a separate, they actually have a defined pavement analysis federally funded program
Okay.
that's defined, but yes, those will be excluded.
Okay.
So that, basically, we're taking 10 images per second, and what this reflects here is these little triangles are, they'll take those images and make a very high quality one out of the several it takes. And so if I click on any of these in the map, I can see the image it took right there. And the same thing going the other direction. And then this is a capture of the image from the vehicle as it's moving and how well you can see the pavement and what quality of the photograph's going to be. That's pretty much the same photograph, just zoomed in. It'll actually go even further out. I did not put any more detail in there, but
It doesn't rate the shoulder work or lack thereof or anything like that?
it can. The PASER system does, in their guidance in the certification process, they don't rate the shoulders. You can, it says in there you can apply the same thing to the shoulders, but they want you applying for the road.
Okay.
And use that as your funding request. But the same principles can be applied to the shoulder. Typically, if I remember correctly on the class, if there's shoulder conditions that are broke down and it's not reflected in the pavement around it, it's usually a common place where somebody's pulling off. The shoulder's not structurally where it should be, so it should be addressed anyway. Where it's a place where people are always pulling off and should be addressed anyway. Typically, if it's a bad shoulder, because it's age or distress, so the pavement there is going to be in the same condition.
Okay.
And you did tell them this is part of GIS.
Yeah, it'll be. If you're familiar with what we give the county guys out there on their signs in a GIS map years ago, where they can maintain them and click on them on a map, this will be delivered the same way. That's really all I had for you. I hope I answered your questions. If not, feel free.
Do you have alternative programs to PASER
They're all, yes.
that you recommend?
No.
Okay.
When we got that memorandum that said that it's probably going to be PASER-like, or they've got to have a formal policy for that, this is the best system that we can find that will be uniform, because they're going to look from community to community. So it's going to be, if they don't say it's PASER, it's going to be something very similar that we can adapt to. And that's why we've taken the picture. So if they come in and say it's not PASER, it's one we're going to develop, it's going to be very similar to PASER. What we've done in other communities is very similar, but maybe less than 10 selections, or maybe 4 or 3. Good, bad, or repair me right now. And then they basically have done that because they are going to replace a segment at a time. So we take those and then rate the segment kind of separate from that, saying this one's going to need replaced, or they try to program it for that one's going to last another 2 years. So in 2017, let's tag that one for an overlay, and that's kind of we sit down and go through what they think's the best method for their maintenance needs, and then they come up with budgets based on that, or identifying it. But I think if you're looking to take advantage of the federal funding, then we probably need to stick with something that's been used in other DOTs and established.
So to go back to what you had said earlier, that if you implemented the program, you'd do it the first time around, and then if someone in the county, Warren wanted to designate someone to rate the roads as a county employee, they would have to go to the state. The state would do the certification? Or is it a private company? Or
LTAP has been doing it. You're familiar with LTAP out of Purdue. They've done some around the state I wasn't aware of till recently. in the past, you had to go to Michigan or Wisconsin to take the certification. Anybody can go online and download the manuals and all that, so you can see what's in the manuals. But if they say it's Payzer, then LTAP will be putting those on for, probably 4 or 5 places around the state, so you can send, county highway personnel or supervisors to and get the training.
Okay.
And it's, the one in Michigan, actually, I've got a flyer. The ones coming up in Michigan are basically an 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. course. And that includes taking the test.
Okay.
And I should have prefaced that by saying, usually when they tie funding to it and you have somebody do it, they're going to want somebody certified doing the analysis. So it's probably about a $20 course. You'll spend more time with your staff being away from the job. You'll have more money in them being away from the job taking the course than what it'll be worth paying. It'll be very insignificant on the cost.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other questions by the board? Mr. Surveyor?
I don't have any.
Okay. Gentlemen, anything else?
Got like that.
If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
3 ayes. We are adjourned.